Hello everyone, welcome to Edwiki learning channel. Please do subscribe to get more updates on cloud and DevOps technologies. In this video, I am going to show you how to deploy a AWS S3 bucket and attach a policy using Terraform infrastructure as a code. This project problem statement is available in the devopsrealtime.com website. The problem statement is all about there is a public S3 bucket where the objects are accessible from public internet users, but we need to allow only the specific public users by adding a policy at a bucket level to look for the source IP address of a public users so that only the specified users can be accessible the objects, though the objects are tend to be accessible over the public internet. Here you can see how to write a Terraform code to achieve this particular project. Before getting on to the Terraform code development, it's better to always see how the project can be deployed manually. Then we can transform these manual steps into the automation code. So let's see how the policy can be written and how the policy can be enforced here to have a specific source IPs are accessible from the public internet space. To look into these things, let me navigate to the AWS Management Console. Let me go to S3. Here I can see there is a S3 bucket which is currently set to a public, right? So we can see that the permissions of this S3 bucket is actually giving to the public users. I can see that there is a JPG image object that is currently uploaded to this bucket. And when I open the object URL from the public internet browser, this is currently accessible as these objects are currently available for public access. Now we need to define a IAM policy that is attaching to the bucket to restrict this to a specific source IP, right? That's the whole idea of this project. So let me get into my Visual Studio Code where the policy is already written in the JSON structure, right? So this is the policy to give the explicit deny is mean that if the source IP is not in the condition list here, then the access has to be denied. That is how the policy is written here. You can write a policy by doing the explicit allow and put a condition in place whether the IP is not matching, right? So it's up to you whether the effect could be a deny or allow. Based on that, we need to put a condition in place whether you are looking for not IP or matching the IP. So in this case, I have written a JSON policy stating that if my source IP is not in the list, right, then the access has to be denied. Good. So where is this IP is coming from? In order to validate, reproduce the issue, let me see what is the IP address currently defined at my local system, right? So let's say, what is my IP address, right? So this will tell you exactly what is the current public IP that is configured at your local system, right? So you can see that my system is currently using the IP that is ending with 242 and the same IP I'm listing in my source IP here, right? So let me copy this policy. Let me give this policy in my S3 bucket. I will go to the bucket permissions and edit the bucket policy. Now let me copy paste the policy there and let me do the save changes. Once the bucket policy updated that the object will be accessible only from the specific source IP. Now let me go back and try to refresh this link to access a object, and you see that the object is still accessible as the S3 policy is accepting this particular source IP address as it is already mentioned in the JSON policy. Now in order to replicate or reproduce the issue, let me change my network, guys. As you know, once I disconnect from my internet and connect it from the different internet provider, then obviously your IP address will be changes. Then I can at least verify that the object is not accessible from the different source IPs, right? So Give me a second. Let me go and do a network switch over there so that my public IP will be changes automatically, right? So I'll go to my networking settings in my laptop. Let me connect it to a different internet provider. Once it is connected to the different internet provider, right? Now let me check what is my public IP address. Now you can see that it is still checking my public IP. Now you can see that my public IP it changes to the one ending with the 229, which is not in the current list of my policy. Now let me try to access the object. Let me go to the object URL and let me try to access this object. Well, now you can see that the object access is denied. So this is at least proving that the policy is working and it is filtering the source IPs, and if it is matching in the list, then only the access is granted or no, though this is a publicly accessible bucket. Now at least we understood that which policy is working and how to manually implement it. The same thing now has to be automated by writing a Terraform code. In my Visual Studio Code, I have a folder here called S3. Inside the S3 folder, I have written a Terraform code with the provider block, with the variable declaration, and the values are assigned in the TF-vaars. I'm sure by now you all know how to write a basic Terraform code, right? So here the intention is not to explain the whole thing, how to write a Terraform code from scratch. I'm just going through the specific resource block that are required here to execute this particular project. Here I have a resource block to create a bucket. Let's say I'm giving the bucket name as 03 ending with and the tags of my bucket, right? As part of our problem statement mentioned in our devopsrealtime.com, I have written a code to enable the version control system for my bucket, and I'm giving the publicly readable access to my bucket. And you can see that this is where I'm attaching the policy to my bucket, right? The same policy that I have tested some time back is listed in my Terraform code with the bucket name and the source IPs that needs to be allowed for accessing this bucket. Good. So look like my Terraform code is all ready. Now let me try to execute this code in order to verify that my Terraform code really works. Let me take a terminal. Let me take a bash terminal. Let me go to the project working folder. The very first command that I need to run is terraform init. In my system, I am using the command called no color because the colored output is not supported in my system. I'm sure this no color option is not required if you are running the same command in your systems. As you know, the init command is initializing the project. It is downloading the required provider specific plugins and the dependencies modules if there are any. And it is keeping all these dependencies and the plugins in the .terraform folder in the present working directory. So that helps the Terraform to connect with the AWS provider when it is actually executing or managing the resources. Well, now I can see that the initialization is completed. The .terraform folder is created in your local folder. Now let me run the command called validate just to see that the syntax is all good. And while you are constructing a policy and attaching to the bucket, you ensure that which public client IPs has to be allowed to access your object, and that is mentioned it in the conditional block, right? Good. So looks my configuration is good, and let me go with the next command, that is a plan, just to see what changes would be happening by my Terraform code in your AWS. Rather, it is actually creating the resources, right? It's always a good idea to run the plan command first to verify what resources that it is exactly creating. This plan says that there are 4 resources that it is going to create, and you can see the detailed information in an output, what exactly is going to be created. Now let me run the command called terraform apply. and hit enter. As you know, the apply command will run the plan one more time, and if you are good and give the approval, then it proceeds for creating the actual resources. And as you know, you can even use -auto approve flag as well if you don't want this kind of the prompt to be appearing asking for your permissions, right? Yes. Now you approve the plan. Now it will start deploying these resources in the AWS. As you see, the apply is completed, and if I go back to my code, and I can see that the bucket name is ending with data03. If I navigate to my AWS management console and refresh the list of S3 buckets, I can see the bucket ending with data03, which is having a public access, but it has some limitations because the policy is applied. Let me go to the bucket name. Let me go to the permission tab there, and now you can see that the policy that you have attached in your Terraform code is applied here, right? So let me go back to my problem statement of my project. Yes, as per the problem statement, I have all completed my Terraform code deployment as per the need, and I have already done the validation as well, guys. Correct? Because I have shown you exactly that when you are accessing the object from the public browser, if that IP is matching, it is allowing the access. If IP is not in the policy list, then the access is denied. I hope you are good with this project. So please do subscribe to the Edwiki learning channel, guys, to get more updates on the DevOps and AWS and the cloud related projects. Thank you.